What to do, YouTube? This is Acid Roots. I'm going to review Justin Bieber's debut project and EP, the 2009 project My World. Now, this was split down the middle because Justin Bieber did not want people to have to wait a year and a half for his album to come out as a whole. So, My World 2.0 was, I think, from the same sessions that My World 1 was from, but he just dropped that a little bit sooner. So, basically, he had worked on this throughout the first half of 2009 and promoted it across that year and was signed to a label as of 2008. So he actually got signed a little bit earlier and worked on it throughout the year 2009. And this was his initial breakout project with all of his hits on there from that point. And so it's pretty rock solid. I'll definitely say, I mean, it's definitely teeny bop material, but I think underneath the right light and context, it does have some things that break through that can be played for not just folks who are between the ages of like 13 and 17 or 18 or so. I can see some of this being powerful enough as kind of, I mean, it can get maybe, I don't want to say sappy, but kind of hammy in a sense, because a lot of this is just puppy love kind of material. And a lot of this is just overall boyfriend material. It definitely reminds me of just the music that you would listen to as a boyfriend in terms of like R&B and that type stuff. Very much as if you're being cuffed by someone, kind of that type material. And I kind of like the concept behind it because it conveys that, because Justin Bieber does not really have like short term in mind, I can at least say, on this project, and that's fine. You look after that, but it's just interesting. It's interesting to kind of have that particular vibe about it. And so I would have to say it is pretty solid. It's a pretty strong debut. I would have to say it's a pretty strong debut. Has a couple of singles that charted pretty well, and just an overall nice outgoing feel. Even despite the fact that Justin Bieber was kind of 14/15 working on this, it was still interesting to kind of get those vibes that he does. He has songs intended for like school dances and malls and clubs if he's able to get to them, that type of stuff. Just overall night situations as far as being within a teenage setting. But it just has, I do feel like some of these can be conveyed to older audiences. You just have to look at it in the right light. Like I would not put like 4 or 5 of these songs in like a mixed CD to listen to in a car or something like that, but I would have like maybe 1 or 2 out of like 18 or 19 songs to kind of say that some of these are in there. And that's kind of how it's intended. Now, would you say, would this be in your vehicle if you're 30 or something and you're, no, I would not listen to this. I don't think this would be a requisite thing to listen to in a vehicle when you're 30 or something like that, but it's definitely a good pick and choose to kind of pick some of these like one time love me and favorite girl to kind of have just as an extra sense to be flirty and that type stuff. But obviously for anyone underneath the age of like 23 or 24, I think more of these can be played in a more quantity. But just understand that for older audiences, people past the age of like 25, 26 or so, I'd probably have to say I would just pick like 1 or 2 of your favorites and then distinguish them throughout your mixed CDs. Now, obviously, there's more than 2 songs that are good on here, but just have them for different days. That's kind of what I would do with it. I mean, it's pretty much like gleaming teen pop, teen R&B, just complete sugary, happy, plucky, happy-go-lucky type stuff. But I do appreciate kind of seeing Justin Bieber in this light, because it does provide, like I said, some pretty solitary boyfriend material to listen to, and just has a nice sense of kind of cuffin season type material and such. That's pretty good. So the singles, the first single is One Time, and this was basically Justin Bieber's debut single. This one is kind of a night-based one. It's surprising that he kicked it off with a club-type beat. Obviously, only thing about it is it's intended for like a teenage setting. But I think it works as it were. This is kind of like one of those songs. It's kind of like when you hear a song that you liked when you were like 13 or something. If you were to hear this in the club today, it's an interesting one. It can have its romance to it, and I kind of like the approach. Has catchy singing, nice production on there. It just feels like a nice kind of stepping out. It's not quite as crazy as some of the other songs, but it just has a nice kind of easy kind of going dance bop to it that works and plays its hand well. I just would say this is a great debut song for Justin Bieber, and conveys like his singing range and that type of stuff, and showcases that he is affable and marketable as far as like a musician. So I did appreciate that. One Less Lonely Girl is the second single, and this one is kind of more of a makeshift kind of just got home from school, just got off work type vibe. Just kind of has a lot more kind of drawl to its gaze, and kind of has a lot more kind of like longing to it and that type stuff. And I feel like I think that this song was necessary. Most of the time I don't usually vibe for some of these type songs, like on My World 2.0. That was one of my complaints I had about it, but this one just pulls it off a lot better. I feel like the concept behind it is just understanding, the not just the good days and the fun times, but also like the times where things are a little bit more jagged and stuff like that. Just being able to kind of say there's something that can go along with that and kind of have those. So I do feel like this is what I talk about when I say that this album is a lot of boyfriend material, because it just kind of has some of those moments where it's like, hey, I'm sticking with you through thick and thin type stuff and that sort of moment. But it's good for its sense. It's definitely one of the better makeshift songs I would have less of a problem listening to. So I would say that. But then talk about the rest of this album. Really, it's just easier to talk about the two songs that I didn't enjoy. So the only two songs out of the seven that I didn't enjoy was just Down to Earth and Bigger. Now, Down to Earth was kind of an even more boring version of One Less Lonely Girl, where One Less Lonely Girl pulled it off because it was more of a single version. It was kind of kept peppy and snappy and just, real kind of to the point, kind of kept peppy and snappy and marketed as like a radio single. But Down to Earth is kind of more, has like just that the effects of One Less Lonely Girl times three, and it's just a lot more makeshift than One Less Lonely Girl was. I wasn't really vibing with that one. And Bigger, I just couldn't get into. Like, I wasn't vibing with Bigger either. That one was kind of the oddball song on here. Just didn't really have much of like I couldn't figure out like the context as to what was going along with it. It seemed like what he was saying is, when I get bigger, I'll mess with this and that type of stuff. But that one was my cup of tea either. To talk about the rest of the album that kicked ass, I'm gonna have to say Favorite Girl definitely is some boyfriend material song. First Dance is a nice one with Usher. I like that he kind of had some background vocals on here. Nice kind of dance song, and kind of not so much dance club song, but just overall any place where you would dance or something like that. It's kind of romantic, but I did like kind of the peppy and kind of disco-like production to that one. Love Me is an interpolation of like another song. I forget what it's by. Yeah, it's by Love Fool by the Cardigans. And this is another club song. This is probably the most rousing club song on here. This is surprising that Justin Bieber, when he was 14, 15, was putting this out and getting ready to step out and go out and have a nightlife and that type stuff. It's interesting to kind of get that. I feel like One Time was kind of a lighter club song, just in more of like a just starting to dance kind of sense. But Love Me was probably about as rousing as it's going to get for 15-year-olds, and kind of like a more kind of younger setting and that type of stuff. But they're both good. These are like the two songs that I would pick on a mixed CD as far as that's concerned, to kind of have One Time and Love Me just kind of, mixed in with like Cypress Hill, mixed in with like Drake, mixed in with T-Pain, mixed in with Dr. Dre and some of that type of stuff. It just works a lot further when you have some of those romantic ones in there, just to kind of have that sense. So it's kind of, definitely don't have a problem with some of these, despite how achingly cheery they kind of are. It's not like I want to say achingly like I have a problem with it, but it's just kind of like, I've said this before, but it's kind of like a kid jacked up on like sugar cubes or something like that. Just a bunch of sugary cereals or something like that. It's just kind of, but I did like it. I liked One Less Lonely Girl. Favorite Girl, I need to talk about that one. Favorite Girl was pretty awesome. Favorite Girl kind of comes off as more of a cuffin and clingy type song. It's a song that you'd listen to on the go with your girl and that type of stuff, going a few places, kind of mall shopping, shop till you drop type stuff, that sort of moments. And it's definitely more of a clingy song, I would have to say. Like I said, a lot of this album is pretty much like boyfriend material, so I definitely feel like this is kind of one of the more kind of doe-eyed and kind of more hammy kind of songs, I would have to say. But it is a good song. I do appreciate it. It's a little bit more intricate than One Time or Love Me kind of is. Those kind of feel like less attached and less kind of like wholesome about like longing and that type of stuff. But yeah, it's just kind of, when you look at this album, there's a lot that goes along with it. Like, I feel like Favorite Girl, First Dance, and One Less Lonely Girl really have like some powerful kind of longing attachment. Favorite Girl, One Less Lonely Girl, and First Dance have a lot more sense of attachment and kind of feel more of almost like being in a whipped scenario. Like I said, most of this album kind of is like boyfriend material, and I definitely kind of feel like it works to that particular charm point as far as getting that done. Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty centered project. I definitely think it's centered to the point of having like the moments for kind of stepping out a bit. Is just kind of like I said, this is a lot more of a project to this is a lot more of a project to kind of pick and choose if you're not a teenager. I mean, if you're like 15, 17, something like that, this is pretty much like a central kind of romance kind of project that just kind of bop to and that type of stuff. But for old, once you're out of like the teenage range and you still happen to like Justin Bieber and you want to check out some of his earlier stuff, it kind of works as just kind of like, you just have like two or three songs, something like that, out of 16, 17, 18 on a CD, just picking out some of those or putting them in a Spotify playlist, something like that. I think it works, but it's just interesting to kind of get that vibe from this project because it's not all the time. Like when you look at like a T-Pain album or an Usher album or a Trey Songz album or something like that, it's not quite as much like that where the concept of just picking out like one or two of these is as much important. But that's kind of what I would say with Justin Bieber or some of these other musicians that kind of show up when they're like 14, 15, 16 or something like that. But it's just, you look after it. I think that's the only real schematic that's in a bad way for Justin Bieber's early days. It's just saying that when you outgrow him and you kind of have less in common with listening to it, it's kind of a good hump to get past. Is just being able to say, well, how do you go about listening to this when you're twice Justin Bieber's age when he made this? And it kind of feels like really kind of like young minded and almost childlike. And that's just kind of, it's like, well, there's the answer to it. You just have to pick the favorite songs and just listen to it. Is this more of a project that you would listen to in doses and kind of just pick it? Because women are going to continue to like this. I know ladies out there, especially ladies underneath the age of 27, 28, are going to like, still, they probably grew up to songs like One Time and One Less Lonely Girl and that type of stuff. So this is the concept of being refreshing, just the concept of kind of refreshing their memory is like, hey, do you remember this? I was 22 when this song came out or something like that. It's within that access, so it's just kind of, that's the concept behind it. It's a fun project, definitely has its pertainability towards it, definitely has its encouragement towards it. I would have to say definitely has its pertainability and its encouragement towards it, so it's enjoyable in that sense. This is nice kind of definitely kind of Valentine's Day flirtiness type bop to it that just has a lot of that kind of like Valentine's and just overall romanticized type stuff, just kind of puppy love type stuff. So I'm gonna give this album out of 10. I'm gonna give it an 8 out of 10 because me liking 5 out of 7 is pretty damn good. I definitely appreciated the effectiveness of it, and the social score I will give like an 8.5. I maybe, yeah, I'll give this social score an 8.5 out of 10 because some of these can kind of be, I mean, they're not quite as intended. I mean, really this is just about him and her. I would definitely have to say it doesn't really have as many songs as My World 2.0. That's kind of, this really feels like Justin Bieber had tunnel vision for whoever the chick is that he's talking about on this album. In a romantic sense, it has a lot more sociable value than it does in terms of just being around folks other than your girlfriend or something like that. And that's just kind of the thing to say, but it does have the social moments just as far as that kind of goes. Not quite as social as My World 2.0, but it's solid for what it is, considering it nailed over three-fourths of the project that was good on here. So that's just kind of the thing. But can this record be topped? I mean, it's good and effective for what it is, had the right kind of promotion. And in terms of like the future, Justin Bieber dropped an album in 2021, so he should be back pretty soon. We'll see what happens. I mean, he's had some health risks this year, and that's kind of why I think he's been away from the spotlight. But I think he'll be back and have another powerful album like these.